Hey, I am Ross with Sony, and today on Sony Simplified, we are going to talk about how to frame the perfect photo. This is a beginner's course, so we're not going to get into any technical specifications or anything like that. We're just going to give you some tools today that are super easy to use so that when you take your photos, they'll look more professional. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Sony Connect channel. We have great videos on there, lots of good tutorials. I'm going to be monitoring the comments today, so if you do have a question, throw it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it. And without further ado, let's get started. So today we're going to cover four things specifically. One is composition. So what is composition? Two, taking that photo. Some things that you should think about when you're taking photos. Good versus bad examples of things you might think about when you're taking a photo. And then we'll give you some real photo examples of kind of what good and what bad might look like. So what is composition? Composition is, your son's first soccer game. You're trying to frame that perfect photo so that when he kicks the goal, it goes into the, across the grass or into the goal. Maybe it's your daughter on her wedding day. Any of those types of things are composition. It could be Yosemite when you're out, taking photos of Bridal Veil Falls. Any of those things are what a composition is. And it's your artistic expression. It's how you're trying to tell a story through that photo. So when you think about taking the photo, there's some things you want to consider. We're going to give you this tool here called the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds grid, a lot of professionals use. In fact, it's even on overlay on a lot of cameras. So if you have maybe a Sony camera, it may have that overlay on there, and it'll give you a guide as to kind of where to put that subject within that grid to make your photos look more professional. I would recommend, if you're a beginner, I would probably just use the auto mode on your camera currently. Look, if you're shooting in manual already, congratulations, that's awesome. There's lots of other features like aperture priority, etc. But I would just, being a beginner and going through a course like this, I would just keep it in auto. It does a lot of the work for you, so you don't have to overthink it. That'd be my recommendation. So when we think about good versus bad photos, like a good photo in terms of how it's framed might be, let's say it's a wedding party, and in that wedding party, there's a church behind that wedding party. Maybe that's defocused. That composition is going to tell the story that it needs to tell. The wedding party, the church they were at, the weather that day, it's going to tell that story. However, if that same photo was shifted a bit and half of that church is missing and there's a parking lot here and you can see cars coming in and out of that parking lot, that's not necessarily going to be the best example of composition. It'd be the same thing if you were out shooting nature. Maybe there's a tour group going through and you can see them in the background. It takes away from the story that you're trying to tell. So just consider those things when you're out taking photos. Now we have some photo examples here that I'm going to share with you. That these are all photos I took. And this first one here, you'll notice there's a tide pool. It's got a little island in the middle. This is the Bodie, California, actually. Bodie, California is a cool place. It's a volcanic place out in like Northern California in the Sierra Nevadas. And this fissure, this volcanic fissure, you can see going right down the center of the 9-box grid, is what I call it. You can see the mountains behind it. It's nicely framed. It tells a good story. There's nothing in there that's distracting. There's nothing that's taking anything away from that photo. When you look at this particular example here, this is that same volcanic fissure, but now you can't really see, there's no story to tell. There's no height, there's no depth. You can't really, is that 6 inches? Is that 10 feet? This doesn't tell much of a story. So that's why when you're taking those photos, you've really got to consider composition. This is the photo that I was going to talk about in the beginning, which is this tide pool here with an island in the middle. And that island and that tide pool are framed perfectly. If I looked at that photo, to me, I know what that photo was. Why was that photo taken? It's because I was trying to capture that little island. I was trying to capture that tide pool. There's another example of this same photo, however, that might tell the story about the fog maybe burning off in the morning and revealing the blue sky. That also could be part of this story. So both of those photos tell a story. They just tell a different story based on how you frame that photo. This photo here is in Cabo San Lucas. And this particular photo, at first glimpse, it's framed well, it looks good, it tells the story about the arch, but what you don't notice, maybe you didn't notice, or maybe you did, is down on the bottom, there's actually a boat down there, which gives you the actual scale of that photo. And that's what's really cool about taking these types of photos, is it really helps you to create that height and scale. Now, this next photo here, you'll notice the bad example. That bad example, that boat's kind of cut off. It doesn't give you the height and scale of the arch. It just doesn't tell that much of a story. Before we move any farther, however, before we get to this photo, let me just check chat really quick. We don't have any comments or chat just yet, but like I said, if you do have a question or comment, please add it here, and I'll do my best to address it or answer it. So this is me doing silly things at too old of an age. So this is me on my mountain bike. And you can see here, there's height, there's scale. You can tell where the rider is in the sky. You can kind of get that feeling of what that, story of that photo is trying to tell. This next example here, you'll notice there's no height and scale anymore. Yes, the rider is off the ground, but we can't tell if that's 10 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet. It just doesn't tell much of a story. So when you're thinking about framing these photos, I want you to consider those things, slow it down, look in the background behind the people that you might be taking a photo of, or the image you're trying to capture, and really consider that entire experience part of what makes that good composition. So if you want to take your photos to the next level, or you want to just learn more, we have tons of great videos on Sony Connect. There's lots of Sony Simplified videos on there as well. But these 3 videos here, I think, are great ones if you wanted to take your photography to the next level. The first one is that portrait photography for beginners. What's great about that particular video is we get into a lot of like camera settings, the different types of lenses, what those lenses do in that environment. So if you want to take it to the next level, I would check that one out. The other one is the prime lens showdown. That one's pretty cool. Get into what is a prime lens, why we use them, how to use them, what the differences are. So that might get you even sharper on the lenses that you're using. Wide angle artistry is a great one, especially if you're doing, and this could also work for portrait photography, but if you're doing landscape photography, these are all great tools to use. It'll just make your videos will look a lot more professional. So I just wanted to thank all of you for joining today. Let's just review what we talked about. First off, we talked about composition. The composition is your artistic expression of the photo that you're trying to take. Taking that photo, consider all the things around. I would use auto. If I'm a beginner, I would use auto. It's just way easier. Good versus bad examples. Now you've kind of understand what those look like, and maybe not necessarily make those mistakes. And then giving you some photo examples up here, just some photos I've taken that are framed, some framed well, some not so framed well. So look, I just want to thank you all. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, don't forget to leave a chat in the comments if you wouldn't mind. And like I said, we'll do our best to answer it. I've been Roth with Sony. Thanks for joining us today. You got armed with some new tools. Go out, take some awesome photos, and we'll catch you on the next video.